it's Penny here, and today we're going to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag. This is where we freak out a little bit. That is already halfway through the year. And as usual, there are way too many books to read. To be honest, I've kind of been doing okay at reading this year, although I did get sick in April, which kind of ruined things a little bit, especially non-reading things. Not too much of an impact on my actual reading. A lot of these questions are actually talking about the books that you enjoyed reading, so I guess it could be freaking out in a positive way. So the first question is the best book that you've read so far in 2021. That is a very difficult question. However, I picked some of my favorites, and most of my other favorites I could fit for other questions. So the one that I'm going to go with for this question is The Inheritance by Robin Hobb and Megan Lindholm. Robin Hobb and Megan Lindholm are actually the same person, but she uses the name Megan Lindholm when she writes more science fiction speculative works, and then Robin Hobb when she's writing her fantastical realm of the Elderlings. So I actually, despite having the physical copy, I listened to this on audiobook, and the first story totally blew my mind. It's a story about these aliens that have kind of been exiled from their home planet and they've come to Earth, but they are treated very badly on Earth. They kind of are able to make music or any sounds with these membranes on their body, but also it's against their religion to make new music. So they spend a lot of time making, like, reproducing human music. And we're following this boy whose mother is kind of like obsessed with music, and she's always having relationships with musicians, and they pretty much just take advantage of her and then leave her. They're living in poverty, and then his mother falls in love with one of these aliens, and things are very strange. But I just loved the way that it was written and the themes it explored, and I felt so emotional even though the story was so strange. And while some of the other short stories in this book weren't quite as good, I think I liked almost every short story in this. So that is amazing for a short story anthology. And I can't believe I actually bought this like a decade ago at a book fair, and then it sat on my shelves. I hadn't even read anything by Robin Hobb, so I didn't know that she was one of my favorite authors, and I just didn't pick this up. So I had what was potentially one of my favorite books just sitting on my shelf unread for a long time. I only ever bought it because it had cats on the cover. If only I had picked it up earlier, I could have been enjoying Robin Hobb for much longer than I have been. Anyway, I'm going to say this is the best book that I've read so far in 2021. Then, the best sequel that I've read in 2021, I'm going to use a Robin Hobb book as well. So I'm going to say that it is The Dragon Keeper, which is the first book in the Rainwild Chronicles. I listened to the audiobook of that in April while I was sick, and I pretty much just lay on the couch with my eyes closed listening to the audiobook, and it really helped to pass the time because I became very invested in this story about these dragons that have all these problems, and the people that care about the dragons and get involved with helping them out, and all the drama that goes on always in Robin Hobb books. I haven't yet continued this series, and I guess technically you could say it's not a sequel because it's the first book in a series. However, that series is part of the bigger realm of the Elderlings, so I'm going to say that it's a sequel for the other books in the series. Is that true? Maybe not, but we're going to count it anyway. And if I didn't count it for this, I would have been counting it for the previous question. Basically, I love Robin Hobb. I learned that last year, the year before, not sure when I started, but I've now read quite a lot of her books and I have loved every single one of them. So not a surprise that she's starting off strong in this video, but I promise I will talk about other authors in this video. So the next question is a new release that I want to read, but I haven't read yet. For this, I'm going to go with Mr. Impossible. So this is the second book in the Dreamers trilogy by Maggie Stiefvater. The Dreamers trilogy is kind of like a spin-off series to the Raven Cycle, but it gets a lot into this dream magic and it's very strange. It does have some characters from the Raven Cycle in it, but it mostly follows new characters. And I do have a hold on it at the library, so as soon as that comes in, I will be reading it. Whew, I hope I can find the time, but I really want to read it as soon as possible. Call Down the Hawk was super weird, but I really love strange dream magic, and so even though it doesn't have the same friend group thing going on that the Raven Cycle did, I'm still really enjoying this new series, and I'm really looking forward to see how strange a direction Maggie Stiefvater takes it in, because I just know it's going to get really weird. The next question is most anticipated release in the second half of the year. For this, I couldn't really think of anything, and then I came up with two, both graphic novel comic volumes. So firstly, in September, I think we should be getting volume 6 of Monstrous. So Monstrous is this really beautiful graphic novel series about this girl who has a demon inside of her, and she's kind of in the middle of this war between the humans and the witches and the Arcanics, which are these half animal kind of people. The art is absolutely amazing. I don't always understand what's going on until I reread it, and I probably, when volume 6 comes out, will reread the whole series again because I do really love the characters, and I think I need to read volume 5 again to understand it properly. But also, like, the art is so beautiful that I could just look at it all day, so why not reread the whole series? Any excuse, basically. As well, volume 4 of Ascender is supposed to be coming out in October by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen. And I think volume 4 is actually going to be the last volume of this series. So Ascender was a spin-off series from the Descender series. In Descender, we have this war between humans and robots, and primarily we're following this companion robot as he tries to find his human family. Ascender still has a lot of the same characters in it, as well as having this magical element. I've been really enjoying it, and since this is the last one, I'll probably reread this whole series again as well. The next question is the biggest disappointment. I think I've kind of got two for this. The first one was If Cats Disappeared from the World. I think it's by Genki Kawamura. Anyway, this is a very short story, so for starters I was disappointed by how short it was, but it was a story where this guy makes a deal with the devil where he will get an extra day of life for every day that he selects something from the world to get rid of. As you can tell by the title, cats were being considered at one point, but it was so short, and a massive part of it just ended up being this weird essay about the importance of movies. And also, I didn't feel like the consequences of these things being removed from the world was really fully explored, because it just, like, the day that the thing was gone, people would just like forget that it used to exist, although it still would have existed the day before, and no one was particularly upset about losing the things that they'd lost, and it didn't make any sense to me, basically. And I think from the premise of the book, it was those consequences that I was the most interested in, and so I wanted it to explore that more fully. And it kind of looked at the impact on this one individual guy, but not really the impact on society. And even the impact on him I thought was minimized beyond what it should have been. So that was disappointing. I think the other one that disappointed me a little bit was Star Daughter by Sveta Thakra. This is a book inspired by Indian mythology, and we've got this girl whose mother is a star, and she gets involved in this competition in the world of the stars to try and save her father. The cover for this book was absolutely beautiful, and I guess this is a lesson as to why you shouldn't pick books just purely on their cover. Because just basically this book was aimed at a much younger target market than I realized it would be, and a lot of the story was really focused on this teenage angst rather than what I was expecting to get, which would be, based on the cover, a beautiful lyrical book with Indian mythology built into the magic system. And it wasn't that. It's kind of my own fault for setting that expectation based mostly just on the cover, but still I was disappointed, and I actually feel bad for that book because I feel like a lot of people would have picked it up based on the beautiful cover, and a lot of people are probably disappointed in it, but that's only because they went into it with false expectations. And I almost feel like that book would have done better with a less beautiful cover, but maybe it wouldn't have sold better, but it might have been enjoyed by more of the people that picked it up. The problem with book marketing is that they actually only care about whether it sold better and not whether people enjoyed it better. So that's annoying. The next question is favorite new author. So that's either a debut author or a new to you author. For this, I'm going to pick Sarah Gailey because I read Magic for Liars at the start of the year and I absolutely loved it. It's about this girl whose twin sister is a teacher at a magic school, and she's like an amazing magician, but this girl is just a private investigator. She never showed any any talent for magic, and she's somewhat bitter about what happened there. However, then there is a murder at her sister's school, and the headmaster asked her to come and investigate it because she thinks she'll have a better perspective of the magical world from which to investigate the murder. And I just really loved the murder mystery, as well as the way that the characters interacted with each other and kind of dealt with this family history and how that had damaged the relationship between these two sisters. And there was kind of a story with the students at the school that was pulled into the story as well. I just really loved the writing style, and so even though I've only read one thing by Sarah Gailey, I feel like they're going to be a new favorite. And I had unknowingly put The Echo Wife, which is their thriller about clones, I had put that on my most anticipated releases of the year. So now I am really excited to read that. I haven't read it yet because I haven't managed to get my hands on it, but that's another one that I'm really excited about reading this year. Then the next question is newest fictional crush, and almost always I say I don't get fictional crushes, so I don't have an answer for this question. However, this year I think I have a fictional crush. What the hell? So my fictional crush would be McGraw from Giant Days. I can possibly show you a picture. However, this is the last volume in the series, so I'll pick one without spoilers. Basically, this is McGraw. Let me get in closer so you can see him. There he is. Maybe like not the most handsome. Basically, he's very calm and very capable, and I think he's just the kind of guy I like. He's kind of serious but kind of funny. Cares a lot for the people that are his friends. I don't know. Something about him. I just love him. So there's that. The next question is my newest favorite character. And for this, I'm actually going to go with Nina from Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. I listened to the audiobook of those at the start of the year, and while I wasn't as in love with that series as a lot of other people are, still I found Nina's character to be great, especially the way that her magic evolves and the way that that impacts her. She was just kind of badass, and I can't wait till the Shadow and Bone series gets to the point where Nina becomes a badass, because it is going to be amazing. The initial part, which we're in during the Shadow and Bone series at the moment, is not my favorite. That's just like her and Matthias, which I don't care that much about, but her magic and what happens with that, super cool, and I love her, basically. Then next we have a book that made you cry. I feel like I've cried a lot in books, but when I looked through the list, I couldn't remember specifically what made me cry, except for in The Traveling Cat Chronicles by Hiro Arikawa. So this is a story all about this man who has this cat, and for reasons he's traveling around to visit his different friends and trying to convince them to take care of this cat for him. Now there is something quite sad that happens near the end, but I think actually what really made me sad is just that this main character is really lovely, and he just, despite really horrible things having happened to him, he still remains positive and just really caring and kind towards other people, and it was just so pure and wholesome, and I really loved that part of it. I was a little bit disappointed that it wasn't exactly what was sold to me, which is that it's a story from a cat's perspective, and the cat's perspective was very disappointing, but putting that aside, the rest of the story was very emotional and really beautiful, and it made me cry at the end. So if you want to cry, maybe try that book, but not the best book when it comes to books from cats' perspectives. Then next we have a book that made you happy, and again I'm going to go with the Giant Days series. I've read most of this series this year, and it's just a really nostalgic story about these girls going to university, and it's not too serious, even though they are doing the typical university struggles, you know, trying to find a house, trying to figure out what to study, what to do with your life, how to get money, all that stuff, how to find relationships, just the struggles of learning to be an adult. I really enjoy it. It's just been a really fun series to read, and I've really enjoyed it. It's not the kind of thing I normally read, but it has definitely made me happy. Then the next question is the most beautiful book you've read this year, and it would have to be one that's right behind me actually. Let me grab it. So we've got Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. These hardcover editions are my absolute favorite. Not only is the cover art like beautiful, amazing piece of art, underneath This book is a beautiful purple. Ooh, so pretty, and it's got like symbols. What is the word called? Indented into it? That's not the right word. And then, oh, it gets more beautiful. Inside the cover art on the end pages, it's amazing, like so beautiful. And then we also have like further sketches throughout the book, and each like chapter heading has a little section of images, and it's just, I love these books so much. They're so beautiful, and I honestly feel a little bit sad for people who don't have these particular editions, because I think they are the most beautiful editions. So that is definitely the most beautiful book that I have bought this year. Then the next question is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? So based on my reading goals, the two things that I mostly need to try and achieve is TBR 0. I think I'm doing pretty good. I think my TBR is down to like 10 to 15 books. Still maybe not entirely achievable by the end of the year, but I think I should be able to get pretty close. So that's pretty good. As well, I put a stretch goal in for series 0, which I'm definitely not going to achieve, but I have been catching up on a lot of series as well. Definitely got a lot more series to read for the rest of the year, but I'm trying to make sure that I make progress every month by including that in how I build my TBR, and so I think that I'm gonna make good progress, even though I probably won't get there for that one either. I do think there's a different version of this tag somewhere that has more questions, but honestly, that's probably enough questions. If you have read any of the books that I talked about in this video, I would love to talk with you about them down in the comments. Or if you've got any book recommendations for me, leave those down there too. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well and not freaking out too much about already being halfway through the year. Time keeps moving on. It always will. Don't let it bother you. And I will see you next time.